I just think we ought to be aware of the public discourse we have and confront it accordingly. You know, it's apparently taboo these days to interject religion into any discussion. But you know, our views on abortion are largely determined by our worldview and the value it leads to place on human life. I mean, not in every case. There are some secularists, I'm sure, who are pro-life. But largely our worldviews determine where we stand on these issues. If we evolved from random molecules, we're hard-pressed to explain why we have any more standing than apes, or trees for that matter. Indeed, many humanists, pantheistic or atheistic people don't believe we do have any greater standing than other forms of life. They don't accept the biblical hierarchy. Ironically, in their feigned humility about human dignity, demeaning it, they exhibit the most egregious form of human pride imaginable. They say they're humans. And they say they're humble. But they are defying their Creator by telling him he doesn't exist. And that his own priorities about the intrinsic value of his creatures is not only irrelevant, but imaginary, because he is imaginary. But isn't it ironic that these very people, the new atheists, Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, and the rest, shake their fists and hate the very God they claim not to believe in? If you believe we were created by the God of the Bible in his image, you must believe human life has a special dignity, and that the decision to end human life cannot factor the Creator God out of the equation. If there is an all-loving God, the one who said through Jeremiah, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Is it conceivable? Is it even fathomable that he's wishy-washy about extermination of that unique human being he created in his image? He, not the mother and father, is the creator of that child. Indeed, to thoughtful believers, it's chilling that we can even have a discussion, a serious debate about the morality of what is truly infanticide. It's deeply distressing that society not only reluctantly permits this brutal practice, but glorifies it. And you know what I'm talking about. The people that do most of the moralizing, apart from me up here pontificating, are the pro-abortionists. They're the ones who shame the rest of us as extremists because we want to protect the most innocent creatures ever made by God. We're evil. Think about how upside down this culture is. So those who advocate killing babies in the womb, which is what it is, actually have the moral high ground in elitist circles today, proving our generation is captive to the big lie, and indeed our society is twisted in so many ways. Yet some interpose the familiar objection. As I alluded to earlier, we cannot legislate morality. We can't impose our religious values on other people. And I can't believe even conservatives say that. People don't think anymore. It's just utter nonsense to say we can't impose as a society, our moral values on other people. It's exactly what we do. It's exactly what every society in the history of the world has done. It's a pernicious lie. It's a dangerous lie. Almost all laws, as I said, are based on morality. Both sides, to take an example of the abortion debate, seek to impose their version of morality on society. The only question is, whose version is going to prevail? Pro-lifers want to impose the burden of continued pregnancy, and pro-abortionists want to impose death or the right to kill with impunity. Moreover, the pro-abortionists, if you want to talk about abuse of the constitutional law and rights, they want to do it judicially, extra-constitutionally, outside the proper democratic processes because they can't do it democratically. They had to do it through Roe versus Wade, Doe versus Bowman, because before it was a matter of state law, and they preempted that with this federal ruling in 1973 or whenever it was. And made it a federal matter, and that's when all this controversy started, because the feds, through the courts, legislating, which they have no constitutional authority to do, imposed the federal will on all the states. So we can't, so their arguments that they don't want to get law involved are doubly deceitful, because they do want their version of law and morality imposed legally, and they want to do it improperly, unconstitutionally, extra-constitutionally. But you see, we can't have ordered liberty without legislating moral standards of behavior. A ban on legislating moral standards is a prescription for anarchy. And by the way, experience teaches us that laws do affect attitudes and behavior. For those who say you can't when you say you can't legislate morality, some people by that mean, well, you can't affect people's hearts and their behavior. Well, true, you affect people's hearts more from the inside. But our laws, as societal statements of what we as a society believe is moral and immoral, do have an impact on our behavior. For example, the 13th Amendment. You know, the 13th Amendment ending slavery. It helped change attitudes of people to be against slavery. Roe versus Wade desensitized us to killing. Do you realize we have, it's been estimated, 15 times more abortions now than we had, or I don't know, Lake didn't make this number, but a few years ago, 15 times more than during the period of Roe versus Wade. 15 times. Think about that, how it's inflated. You can't tell us that the law doesn't have an effect on people's behavior. Those with a Judeo-Christian worldview are trying to, those without a Judeo-Christian worldview are trying to intimidate those with a Judeo-Christian worldview through specious use of the constitutional arguments to say those of us with this Judeo-Christian background have no business in the public square. We don't have a right to lobby our position. Legislators don't have a right to legislate from their worldview, from their Christian worldview. Of course, everybody legislates from their worldview. Everybody governs from their heart, from their convictions, and whatever their worldview is that give them those convictions. But because the secularist doesn't call his a religion, then he gets around his so-called constitutional objection. But in fact, they're every bit as zealous, if not more, than Christians are about their faith. So we're in a very fierce culture war in this country, as you know. Our values, those that serve as the foundation for our liberties, hang in the balance. The goal of the radical secularists is to supplant absolute Judeo-Christian values with secular relativism. They've come a long way. Everything that's Christian, everything that's attributable to or derivative of Western civilization is denigrated, demonized. You can see it in the textbooks. High school, many high school, public schools, they've excised references to our Christian heritage from the textbooks. All in the name, by the way, of tolerance. Last week, the Obama administration, I don't know if you saw this, announced its objection to adding FDR's D-Day prayer to the World War II memorial in Washington, D.C., because any plaque or inscription of the prayer would dilute the memorial's central message. The very presence of the Christian God is an affront. Somehow dilutes the message. I don't know what could be more innocuous and inoffensive a message, especially when it happened in history. They want to change history to excise it. It's not like we're going to evangelize it. You're just accurately reflecting history, which happens to include the Christian faith. And they want to excise it because it might offend someone. They want to purge the condition of Christianity out of our culture. They deny it. Don't fall asleep. Don't, while they're doing it. Don't believe their denials. Don't be poo-pooed by all this stuff and distracted and deterred because it's happening. And I'm not trying to be sensationalistic. I'm just telling you, it's happening. The Judeo-Christian tradition underlying Western and American civilization distinguishes itself by the incalculable value it places on human life. Secularists are undermining the sanctity of human life. But with the disintegration of the pillar of life will follow in time the implosion of freedom. Why is that? The reason is because if we abandon the biblical principle that humans are created in God's image and entitled to dignity above all other beings and forms of life, there will no longer remain any institutional obstacle to the oppression of human beings by other human beings who are more powerful, who the framers anticipated, as they called them, a tyrannical majority, when they framed the Bill of Rights to protect those essential rights against the so-called tyranny of the majority. These rights are God-given. And if we undermine the foundation from whence we get those rights, we say there is no God, obviously there can't be inalienable rights. You can't have anything inalienable if somebody didn't implant them in you. Somebody being the personal God of the Bible. Which is what most of the framers, despite history revisionism, believe. So if human beings are just evolved versions of random collections of molecules, we will have removed the transcendent basis upon which our liberties depend. So at the very core of the culture war, the issue of whether we retain as a society an awesome respect for the dignity and sanctity of human life as made in God's image is the critical matter. Society's respect for life ultimately determines the type of society we live in. Respect for life is indispensable for preserving the kind of culture that has made this the greatest nation in the history of the world. To value human life is to value ourselves.